Jæja, góðan daginn. Velkomin á föstudagsfyrirlestur á fyrsta föstudagsfyrirlestur á þessu hausti og fyrst allan á mörgum. Við erum með Mahammad sem að mun fara í AVD, nýji íslenski vinur okkur, New Icelandic friend. Þannig að við ætlum bara að gefa honum orðið og sjá hvort hann geti kennt okkur eitthvað. So, Mahammad, I'll just give you the torch and thank you very much for giving us your time first of all, and we are very excited, and at least I am. One thing that I want to mention that is you have a lot of courses on Udemy, which is fantastic, and I recommend everyone, at least those are taking exams, the 140 exam, can take a look at it at Udemy, which Mahammad created. So, Mahammad, I'll give you the word.
Thank you, dear, for the quick introduction. So, myself, Mahammad Kubaib, I'm based in UAE, Dubai. So I'm basically working on Azure and Azure Virtual Desktop, as well as other VDA technologies as well over the last 10 years. So I'm a Microsoft MEP. So last year I got awarded with MEP, and along with I have a Udemy course, as well as I have a YouTube channel where I'll post all the updates or new features, technologies related to the end user computing. So I will give you the link. If you wanted to study, you can check my YouTube videos where I have covered multiple webinars, courses, as well as if you wanted to learn more, you can check out my Udemy link as well. We will share you later. So yeah, in this webinar, we are going to quickly discuss about the Azure Virtual Desktop and how it will help you in your organization, to optimize, and help the work from home situations or to secure the infrastructure, etc. So let's start. So the first one is introduction to Azure Virtual Desktop. So Azure Virtual Desktop is a desktop and application virtualization service that runs on Azure Cloud. So in order to give you the quick background, what is Azure Virtual Desktop or the applications? So it is nothing but, let's imagine you have a user who joined the company. So for him, you need to give the applications, right? Because at the end of the day, the user, he needs his application, irrespective of you deliver it through desktop or only application, doesn't matter, because for him it should work and he need to do his day-to-day job. So consider one employee joins your company, and normally the IT team, they have to get the laptop, reimage, or install the applications. So if you have the computer stock, then fine. Otherwise, you have to wait for your vendor management or to get the hardwares, etc. So that process may take 1, 2, 3, or maybe 1 week, right? So with the help of Azure Virtual Desktop or any virtualized desktop solution, like in market today we have Citrix, VMware, and many other vendor, but today we'll concentrate only on Azure Virtual Desktop. So with the help of AVD, what you can do, you can quickly onboard your user with his own personal desktop or any device. Let's say if he is having iPad or any tablets or any devices which is having internet connections, and it supports which supports the client, which is Azure Virtual Desktop clients, then he can quickly onboard and he can have access to his applications like within minutes to hour. So you no need to wait for a week or days, number of days. Okay, so this is the biggest advantage, if I wanted to convince you the use cases. Okay, so they can quickly get into the work and they can start their BAU. So this is the idea of Azure Virtual Desktop, so which will enable you to work from anywhere, from any device at any time. It is not like you have to sit in some network or some specific devices. So it will remove all those barriers. So people can be, your employees can be more productive with the help of these virtualized solutions. So here in this product, either we can do the virtualization of your desktops, which is a Windows 10 or Windows 11, or you can only deliver the applications as well. For example, my work is only on the CRM or on the SAP. So then I can deliver only the applications. So no need of delivering the complete virtual desktop or complete Windows 10. So such flexibility is also there with the help of this solution. So this is the quick idea like about the Azure Virtual Desktop. So let's look into the benefits. So the first one is simple to deploy and configure. So with the help of Azure Virtual Desktop, because this is powered by Microsoft Azure, so you can quickly go to the portal and then you can select which virtual machine you need and you can deploy and then you can install your applications and you can make it ready within minutes to hour. For example, in order to understand this, let's go to the whiteboard. So for example, think about our traditional days. So for example, let's say you have a data center. So this is your data center and you wanted to implement the VDA solution in a on your data center. For example, let's say if you are going to use Citrix or VMware, any other solution which is supporting the on-premise data center. So first, what you have to do, you need to have a space on your data center. First thing is the space. Second, you need to procure the hardware to set up this virtual desktop infrastructure. For example, you're going to buy HP or Dell Blade servers or hyperconverged device such as Nutanix or VMware, etc. Okay, so you have to pay for the hardware. On top of it, you have to pay for the hypervisor. For example, if you are going with the VMware, you need to pay for the VMware hypervisor or any other hypervisor. If you are wanted to plan, you have to pay for the hypervisor as well. On top of it, you will create your virtual machines. For example, let's say you're creating a Windows 10 virtual machines. So you have to pay for the Windows 10 license as well. So once you have the Windows 10 license, everything is ready. The next comes the user access license for your Citrix or VMware, whatever the solution. So you have to pay for the product license in order to activate this VDAs on top of these Windows devices. Okay, so in order to brief, first you have to pay for the cost for the VDA, which is Citrix or Microsoft, VMware cost, and then you have to pay for your hypervisor cost, and then you have to pay for the your Windows license cost, and then for the hardware, etc. So it doesn't stop only here. So in order to maintain and manage, you have to pay for your employees, because they have to maintain your data center, the all the cooling and other stuffs you have to manage. So there are many stuffs involved when it comes to on-premise, and it includes a lot of cost as well as a lot of maintenance, etc., etc. But when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop or Azure, it is very simple. You just need to get the Azure subscription. So this will you'll get it in within maybe day, or within, like, it doesn't take much time. So once you have your Azure virtual once you have the Azure subscription, you can quickly go to the Azure portal and you can choose which VDI, which size of the VM you need, select and deploy, and then install the application. So this doesn't take much time. So here you don't need to worry much about the cost or hardware, because hardware is completely managed by Microsoft. So you can get rid of the hardware maintenance, etc., etc. So you just wanted to concentrate on your applications. That's it. Okay, because here your work is just to create the VMs and manage these VMs. That's it. Okay, nothing else when it comes to storage maintenance or hardware maintenance or other things. So the very simple and very easy to create or manage or build the virtual desktop infrastructure with the help of Microsoft Azure. So we'll come to the costing part, etc. So later we have the separate slide for that. But in a quick, in a nutshell, this is the concept of Azure Virtual Desktop and why we are calling it as easily deployable. Okay, so let's go to the next topic. So the second option is access your desktop and virtual applications from anywhere. So as I told you, so you can access your application from any device, whether it is a Mac device or whether it is a Windows device, whether it is a iPad or iOS device, etc., etc. So as of today, RDS Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop supports most of the client, which is I mentioned Mac, Windows, Android, as well as iOS. On top of it, it is also supporting HTML5. So it means that you just need to have a browser. That's it. You can access your VDAs and you can access your applications. The third one is simple security management. Microsoft Azure comes with many security features. So like one of my favorite is Azure Active Directory with the conditional access policy and MFA. So you won't get such kind of security in any of the other VDA solution, because Azure AD is providing such a beautiful security stuff for your Azure Virtual Desktop for the secure to make it secure. So you can apply a number of conditional policies such as location based restriction or hybrid based restriction, like there are a number of restriction you can put, and you can make your infrastructure very secure. So this is the beauty of security. And it also comes with defender, like you can make use of defender, and you can make use of disk encryptions and so many things. So I have one blog where I will only talk about all those things, that I will share it with you guys later. So you can go through what all the things we can achieve from the security perspective. Third one is reduce cost with the pooled multi-session resource. So the beauty of Azure Virtual Desktop is, so for example, let's say in your on-premise location, you have deployed a VDA solution using Citrix, VMware, or whatever. So let's say you have 100 users. So in order to support 100 users, for example, this is your data center. So you have to create 100 VMs. So 100 Windows 10 VMs you have to create, and then you have to map that users to these VMs. Okay. So basically, as I told you, you need to have 100 Citrix license or VMware license, and then 100 Windows license and the underlying hardware, etc. But in Azure, they have a concept called multi-session. So multi-session is nothing but, let's say this is your Azure cloud. So you have 100 users who needs VDA or applications. So what you can do, instead of deploying 100 VMs, you just deploy 10 VM with a good specification. So consider this is 10, and each VM will support multiple sessions. For example, if you wanted 100 users to be supported, so you can deploy 10 VMs and you can map 10 users each. So at a time, simultaneously, 10 users can log into one virtual machine and then they can do their work. So you can save a cost a lot here. I like from the license perspective and also from the hardware on all other stuffs included, right? So you are straight away offloading these 100 VMs with the 10 VMs with the feature called multi-session. And this multi-session, it is only supported in Azure. So now Microsoft also supporting for the Azure stack also. So those who wanted to deploy, like there are some financial institution, they don't want to use the cloud, and in that case they can use Azure stack. So that is a different concept, but they're bringing the support for that as well. Okay, so this is the beauty of Microsoft Azure, where you can have a multi-session, so which will dramatically decrease your cost when it comes to cost management. So then the next benefit what we have is cost effective, which is already I covered. So here you can pay only whatever you use. This is not the use case with the on-premise. So on-premise is like a capex, like you are doing the investment in the initial stage itself. Whether you use or don't use, still you have you already paid for that. But in Azure, it is not like that. Whatever you use, only you pay for that. Whatever you don't want to use, let's say you wanted to use only 5 VMs in 3 days. Let's say in a week you wanted to use 5 VMs, you're going to use you're going to pay only for that 5 VMs. Yeah. So however, in the in another 3 days you wanted to use 10 VMs, so then you are going to pay only for the 10 VMs. So it is not like, let's say you have a 10 VMs throughout the week, you are going to pay for the 10 VMs. Let's say if you shut down for 5 VMs, or if you stop the VM 5 VM, let's say you have the more load during the weekend and less load during the weekdays, then you can optimize and you can turn off your VMs during the off peak hours, and you can save the cost. So it is pay as you go, it will get built like that. Okay, this is similar to any other cloud, so nothing special on it. But when it comes to on-premise, this is the comparison. And then easy to scale. So easy to scale, the meaning of this is, for example, let's go to the whiteboard again. So consider the on-premise scenario. let's say this is your data center and you have some 1,000 users and you bought your all your hardware, hypervisor license, everything. So everything is working smoothly. And all of a sudden, let's say you wanted to increase this workload to 1,000 to 5,000. Okay. So in this scenario, you have to bring the new hardware, which may take weeks to months, and then you have to bring all the other licenses, etc., etc. So maybe this new deployment to scale up 5,000 users, it may take, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, depends. Okay. So when it comes to Azure, it is within a minutes, or within a hour, you can deploy or you can scale your infrastructure from 1,000 to 5,000. You can do it minutes to hour. Like, it does not require days to week or months, because Azure is highly scalable, and this is the beauty of cloud. So this is the main difference when it comes to scaling. And the last point I would like to highlight, flexible. So like all other Microsoft cloud services, there are no contractual commitments with AVD. For example, let's say you wanted to stop the AVD service in between, let's say like you no more, let's say you have a contractor scenario. Let's say you have a contractor onboarded to your company, maybe to work on 6-month project. So after 6 months, you don't want to use it. So in that case, you can terminate without any penalties, or without any such contractual commitments with Microsoft. So this is as simple as it is, like similar to other Azure services. So this is so flexible. So when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop pricing and licensing, this is the very beautiful part when it comes to AVD. So here we have, licensing entitlement. As I stated over here, there is no additional cost if you have eligible Windows or Windows 365 or Microsoft Remote Desktop License client access. So let's imagine, let's say you have a company, you already have the Office 365 license, maybe E3, E5 or A3, A5, or you have RDS license, etc. Then if you wanted to build your Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure, then you don't need to procure or you don't need to pay anything, because the existing license is already covered this licensing for the Azure Virtual Desktop. So this is the beauty. When it comes to other VDA solution, for example, let's imagine you're going with the Citrix, VMware, or any other vendor, then it is not the use case here. It is not the case like that. You have to pay separately for the user license or device license. But in AVD, there is no cost if you already have these licenses. And in this today's enterprise world, 99% of the customer already will have either A3, E3, E5 or A3, A5, all those licenses which I highlighted over here. So you're like logically or technically you're paying zero, or if you have this license. So you are going to pay only for the compute. For example, let's say you're deploying D2S v5 or E8S v5 VM along with the storage P10 or P5, sorry, P10 or P15 disk. So you're going to pay only for the storage and the compute part. So you're not going to pay anything for the licensing or per user license. So nothing, it is free for you if you have the license, the existing license. And there is one more question, there is one more point here, per user access pricing. So there is one Microsoft has introduced, which is a per user access pricing. It is a monthly user pricing for access to Azure VDA for the external user. So in order to demonstrate this, in order to understand this point, what is external user? So this is, I'll go to my whiteboard. For example, let's imagine this is your company and you have 100 users and already you have procured E3 or E5 license. Then you're going to the cloud, Microsoft cloud, and you will deploy your VDAs, and then your user can access this without any additional license requirement. Why? Because they already have E3 and E5. And consider now another scenario. You're going to onboard the vendor or any contractors. So let's say you have 10 contractors. Okay. So for them, it does not make sense to provide the E3, E5 because they are not using that feature, which is E3 or E5 is referring. And only for the purpose of AVD, if you wanted to procure 10 E3 or E5 license, it does not make sense because you're paying more, right? So and also it is like maybe your contractor maybe for 1 month or 2 months, 3 months. So for them it does not make sense you go and buy E3 or E5 license or any other license to access the AVD. So in order to overcome this challenge, what Microsoft has introduced, they come up with something called per user license for the external users. So in this case, what you have to do, you have to approach Microsoft and you need to get the per user license for this 10 users. So in this case, the monthly billing will happen based on these users for their access. So when their contract period is ending, then you can simply terminate this, so that you're no need to buy this E3 or E5, these expensive licenses. So you'll just pay some dollars, maybe like let's say some $30 or something like that. Or I'm not sure, you can get the costing on the portal. What is the cost for the external users? This is very less as compared to E3 or E5 license. And one more thing, let's say if you already procured this user license, which is a per user license, and you wanted to use the feature which is available in E3 or E5, that is not possible. So this user can only access Azure Virtual Desktop. That's it. If you wanted to, if you want them to use any other application which requires E3 or E5, then yeah, definitely you need to have this. But this is the ideal use case, that if the work is only to access VDA, then you can go with this. So this is the flexibility you have. So then the infrastructure cost. So this is related to the licensing. So this is related to the licensing, user access license. And apart from that, you have to pay for the Azure infrastructure cost. This is, you might know that you need to pay for your compute, storage, and your operating system, and for the user profile storage and networking. So this is in general like the Azure cost when you deploy any VMs. So this comes along with the Azure the virtual desktop pricing. So you must know that before you meet any customers, you must know these things. What are the costing involved if you are providing any Azure virtual desktop solution to the customer? Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. So let's go to the architecture. So Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, this is kind of a PaaS solution. So when I say PaaS solution, here some part of the some part of the Azure components is managed by Microsoft, and some part of the uh, components are managed by the customer. So as you can see here, we have a RD client, customer managed. It means this is the client application which we are using to connect to the Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop. This should be managed by customer itself, because this is basically on the employee desktop, or on the endpoint. So this is Microsoft is not managing this part. And then we have in the right side, customer managed Azure VM or services. Basically, we need to manage the VDI, which is our virtual machines in Azure, and application. If you wanted to install any application inside the Azure Virtual Desktop, that you have to manage. And the file share, let's say you wanted to use the Azure NetApp file or Azure Premium file, all those shares, all the security related to the shares and everything you have to manage. But it is only related to the software level, not on the hardware level. Like let's say if some disk failed in the Azure files, that is not your job. That is Microsoft will take care. But on the operations level, let's say some parts, not all, you have to manage. And then you have a Active Directory. So Azure Virtual Desktop require both Azure Active Directory as well as Active Directory. We'll discuss more this in the identity part. So these things you're going to take care. Let's see what are the things Microsoft is managing. So basically Microsoft will manage web access. It means that, let's say if you wanted to access Azure VDA over the browser, okay, then there should be some web services right in the backend. So that is managed by Microsoft. Then we have a diagnostics. So here we will have more like monitoring and all those things. So that is also managed by Microsoft. Then we have a gateway. Gateway is basically to connect from the internet or from the remote. Let's say in a normal scenario, if you wanted to connect to your office or any other application which is inside your data center, what we use VPN, right? So similarly, in order to connect to Azure Virtual Desktop, we need something called VPN, right? So that is managed by Microsoft, which is called as gateway. So gateway will act as a proxy or a VPN to connect to your VDI. So that is completely managed by Microsoft. And then we have a broker, which is nothing but it will handle all the user sessions and SQL database things, etc., etc. For example, let's say I am the user. I may have application access to VDI, I'll have access to applications, etc., etc. So all those information is collected by broker and it will be stored in the Microsoft Azure SQL DB. So this part is completely managed by Microsoft, and this we call it as control plane. So control plane, it is not available on all the Azure regions. So it is only available in selected Azure regions. However, you no need to worry. Why? Because there is no dependency with respect to latency, etc. Because this is just to store the information. However, all the applications, your virtual machine will be on your region and on your subscription. So on the control plane, you will have only the metadata such as username and the IP address of the session host and application names, etc. All those metadata, like no customer data, no production data will be stored over here. All those will be inside your VDA or inside your Azure tenant itself. So there is no customer data or sensitive data which is going to the meta, your control plane. So for example, let's take our scenario where if I'm based in UAE. So in UAE, we do not have the control plane. We are using the nearest control plane, which is in Netherlands, I believe. So, but our VMs and all other things, storage, everything will be in our region itself, which is in UAE. So you have to make sure when you deploy your VM or when you are planning to do a Azure Virtual Desktop implementation, always choose the nearest region to deploy your VMs, which is close to your users as well as close to your company, so that you will have a low latency. So we'll talk about that latency part later. So in a high level, you are managing this part, which is VDI or VMs, applications, your Active Directory or Azure files, and Microsoft will manage the control plane, where we have a web access gateway, etc., etc. So already I talked about what is web access, what is gateway, what is connection broker, and what is diagnostics. This is completely managed by Microsoft. And then what we are managing, basically Azure Virtual Network. So that you have to create and manage. And then Azure AD. Azure AD, again, it is a PaaS service where some configuration you have to manage, like let's say user creations, etc., or user synchronization. That it's your duty as a customer. And then we have Active Directory. That is also your duty to manage this. And then we have a Azure Virtual Desktop session host. For example, let's say Windows 10, Windows 11, or server, which you are going to deliver it. That it's your duty to manage this. And then at the end, we have Azure file or NetApp file. This is to store the user profile. I'll come to the topic why we need Azure file and Azure NetApp file in Azure VDA. Yeah. So this is very important architecture. So how Azure VDA connection is established, and like what is the traffic flow. So in order to understand this, let's go to our whiteboard. So to understanding the connection flow is very important. Otherwise, it's very difficult, when it comes to troubleshooting, etc. Okay. So as you can see in my screen, here we have a client, right? And then we have a public internet. And then this is the control plane, which I explained. This is completely managed by Microsoft. And then this is your subscription on which you have your Azure virtual machines, and then you may have your Azure Active Directory or Active Directory or your network, etc., etc. So let's say if I am the user, I'll go to my browser and I will click on client.microsoft. This is the URL to access the Azure VDI. First, it will go to the Azure Active Directory. As you can see, it will go to the Azure Active Directory. Here I will do enter my credential. So once I enter my credential, it will authenticate and then it will display all the VDI details. For example, let's say that we can demonstrate this later, but in a nutshell, this is the flow. So once I log in, I'll get my application or VDIs. Then I'll click on the VDI, then it will open it for me. So if I open this video, I have a video over here where I'm already have this. So as you see, so I'm going to the browser now. So after the authentication, you will get this page. So here I'll have my desktops or applications. Then I will launch the VDA. So it will, again, it will ask one more prompt where we have to enter the credential again, and then it will connect to the VDA. So if you see this, so I'm going to enter the credential again here. So once I enter the credential, it will take me to the VDI. So this is the VDI which got launched, and the login is currently in process. Yeah. So once I land inside the VDI, I can access my applications and I can do my work. So this is the flow. So when it comes to the architecture diagram, let's see how it is going, establishing the connections. Yeah. So the user on the client machine, he will connect to the he'll launch the browser, or he will launch the ID client. So this is the client. So already have it in my laptop, as you can see here. So this is the client they will launch. So once they launch, the traffic will go to the public internet. Yeah. Yeah, the traffic will go to the public internet. Sorry. Yeah, so from the client, the traffic will go to the public internet. So from the public internet, it will reach the Microsoft control plane, which I explained. So it will hit the gateway. So as I told you, gateway, it is kind of a proxy, or it is kind of a VPN. So once it lands here, then sorry, hold on. I missed one flow here. Yeah, from the client, user will connect to the URL which I showed you, which is client.microsoft.com. So it will go to the internet. From internet, it will reach ID web. Okay, this is the service which is responsible for you for the initial login page. So the moment it will hit to the ID web, it will redirect the traffic back to your Azure Active Directory. So in the Azure Active Directory, you will get the login page. So you will log in. So once you enter your credential, right, that credential get validated with your Active Directory. So either through ADFS or pass through, that is the method which you use, for the authentication. So once the authentication is completed, right, the authentication token, the return traffic will go again back to the ID web. Okay, so now the ID web got to know that this user has got verified and he is the legitimate user. So now what it will do, it will display what all the applications available to the user. For example, let's say I have a VDA and I have some application also assigned. So now this page will get displayed on the user desktop. So this is the traffic. Let's say after entering the credential, it will get validated, and then it will yeah, it will as I shown you in the video over here. Let me go back. See, it will display like this. After the authentication, it will display like this. What are the applications, or what are the desktops you have in your profile? Yeah, so that is this stage. So once you have the application details, the next step is what you're going to do. You're going to click on this application. For example, let's imagine I have access to these many applications which I show over here. So I'll click on this session desktop, or or another desktop. So now the traffic from the client, it will get initiated to the internet, and then it will hit the gateway. So now we have the traffic at gateway. So what gateway it will do? It will inform the broker saying that I have a user who is requesting for a desktop. Please give me the desktop details so that I can connect. So broker, what it will do? It will check with the database, and it will get to know that what are the available VMs we have hosted in our subscription. So it will generate a traffic from broker back to your subscription. So in the subscription, it will check which VM is least loaded. Let's say if it is a multi-session, in multi-session, as I told you, you may have 5 users or 10 users, right? So let's say if you have 100 VMs in the backend, this will check which VM is least loaded. And let's say if you have one VM which is having only one user connection, it will get the detail of that VM, and it will ask that VM to connect back to the gateway. So this is the reverse traffic. Here you are not going to send any inbound traffic. This is a purely an outbound traffic which you are initiating from your VM to the gateway. So you may have a question, how you got the gateway details? Like, let's say gateway may be in any location, right? Let's say gateway is available in UK, or gateway is available in Asia. So you may have a question, how my session host is got the information that on which gateway I have to connect. So this information my session host will get when the broker is contacting the backend session host. Let's say as I told you, the user is connecting, so this gateway will contact the broker. So during this time the broker will get to know that on which gateway I have to ask the session host to connect. So that's how my VM will get to know that let's say if the user is coming from UK, he need to connect to UK gateway. Let's say if the user is coming from Asia, he need to connect to the Asia gateway. Why? Because it will reduce the latency. So it does not make sense that I am the UK user, I have to connect to Asia gateway and then I have to connect back to VM, right? So it does not make sense. Why? Because it will increase the latency. So that's why this is the beautiful architecture from Microsoft, where it will route the traffic nearest to the user. So this is how the VM will connect back to the gateway. So gateway will already having one connection from the client. So now gateway will have another connection from session host to the this gateway. So using this bridge, it will do the connection. So this is how Azure Virtual Desktop will connect back to the client. So the beauty of this is, let's say this is your Azure subscription, and here you have your VM, and this is the control plane which I told you. So here you have your gateway. So you just need an outbound connection. You don't need any inbound to your infrastructure. So this is the safest method, because the moment you allow inbound from internet, it will be a threat. It may have any malicious traffic, etc. So in Azure Virtual Desktop case, you don't need any inbound traffic on your VNet or on your subnet. So it is a purely a outbound traffic. That also you can pass it through proxy. If you need more security, you can also use it through proxy instead of directly sending it. So this is one more feature, added security for the outbound traffic. So you don't need any inbound to your VM. So this is the beauty. So I hope this architecture is clear for you guys. So let's go to the next topic. The communication
Kubaib,
matrix.
Just one question. So the outbound traffic which you said, right? So is it necessarily should go through proxy, or I mean, is it recommended to bypass the proxy?
It is recommended to bypass the proxy. Why? Because already this traffic, right? For example, let's say this is your control plane and this is your Azure cloud where you have your VM. So this is the traffic, outbound traffic. So already this is encrypted. Okay, so this RDP, this outbound traffic is encrypted. So it is, as per Microsoft, it is not necessary or not recommended to go over the proxy. Why? Because your proxy will do the SSL offloading, all other SSL inspection, etc. Okay, because already this is a secure and encrypted traffic. So you're putting more load on this. So not recommended. So recommended is directly sending over through the firewall. So bypassing the proxy. But some companies, they need all the traffic to be all the outbound traffic to the internet to be flown over the proxy only. In that scenario you can do it. This is supported. It is not like it is not supported, but only the recommendation is you, as much as possible, you can avoid the proxy. But if your security team is saying that it has to go over the proxy, then it is also supported. Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, coming to the communication matrix. So before I jump into the communication matrix, I wanted to highlight you one thing. All the traditional VDA solution which requires inbound communication, for example, from the internet, you need 443 or other ports to be allowed. But with respect to Azure Virtual Desktop, you don't need any inbound communication to your virtual machine. So this is the beauty when it comes to security. Communication matrix. So from the client, so this is the client, it may be in internet or corporate network, etc. You have to allow all these 443 ports so towards this URL. So for example, let's say login.microsoftonline.com or star.wvd.microsoft.com. So this is you have to allow it. So let's say if your client is sitting on internet, then you no need to worry, because by default everything is allowed. Let's say if you are sitting inside your corporate network, then make sure that you have to allow these ports. Okay, and again here the security concern maybe either I have to allow directly or I have to use proxy. So again, yes, this is supported proxy. You can allow this via proxy as well. So this is from the client. Yeah, coming to the server, let's say my Azure VM. So as you can see, you need to allow all these outbound ports. So there is no inbound, as you can see here, no inbound is involved here. So all this outbound you have to allow from your Azure Virtual Desktop. Yeah, Azure Virtual Desktop subnet. So again, the recommendation is to use directly over the firewall. If you are having some strict security concern, then you can use proxy as well. However, as I told you, SSL inspection, etc., not necessary for this traffic. So let's jump into types of virtual desktop. So when you say Azure Virtual Desktop, we have multiple types of Azure Virtual Desktop profile available. So the main Azure Virtual Desktop types are personal and pooled or non-persistent. So in order to understand this, let's go to the whiteboard and we'll understand what is personal and what is pooled. Personal is nothing but it is same like a physical PC or physical laptop. Let's say you have your laptop, right? So each day you are logging into this laptop and you will work, and as far as you are in with that company, you will use the same. So it is strictly dedicated to you. So similarly, personal laptop, personal VDA is also same type. So we will create a Azure Virtual Desktop and we have a user, let's say XYZ. So we will assign that VDA to the user. So as far as these users are, within that company working, they will get the same VDA. So all the work or whatever they do, everything will get stored here itself. Okay, so it is dedicated. It is only for them. I can like the Y user cannot go and access this particular VDA. Let's say this is the number 1, number 2, number 3. So imagine why the user Y, he cannot access VDA number 1 or any other VDA. He should use his own VDA which is dedicated to him. So this is a dedicated concept. This is mainly beneficial for the users such as developers, etc., where they need some customization and everything they wanted to do on their VDAs. So in that scenario, like let's say developer, etc., it is better you go with the personal. The problem with the personal is it will add extra cost. Why? Because you have to carefully take the backup of this, because if this corrupted, then he may lose all the data. So you have to initiate backup, etc. Same like how you're doing it for your laptop, right? All the maintenance things you have to do it here. So what is the advantage of pooled? Let's go to pooled and we'll get to know what is pooled. For example, let's imagine you have 100 users, right? So let's say you will deploy VMs. Instead of 100, let's take 5 users for simplicity. So I am creating 5 VMs for these 5 users. Okay, I have user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, user 5. User 5, let's say, and you have a VM called A, B, C, D, E. So let's see what is pooled. Yeah, so pooled is nothing but here the VDAs are not dedicated to any particular user. For example, today, let's say today Friday, right? So Friday user 1 can come and log into this, 2 can go here and log into this, and 3 can log into this one, and 4th one can log in, and 5th one can log into the VM called E. Okay, so they may log off today and tomorrow they again come back and they can launch the VDA. This time the user 1, they may connect it to some other VDA, the available VDA, maybe VDA B, or the 2 he may connect it to the VDA D, or 5 he may connect it to VDA C. So it will randomly, it will get changed. Okay, it is not tagged to anyone. Now you may have a question. Let's say I am saving some data here on the day 1, and day 2, if I'm coming and logging in and I'm getting this one, I may lose my data. So because data is very important, right? How will mitigate this problem? So there comes something called a roaming profile. So most of the people will already aware what is roaming profile. So here in AVD, we are using some technology called FS Logics. This is similar to roaming profile only. Okay, so here let's say I am the user. This is my VDI and I am the user. So if I'm saving anything on this VDI, let's say I'm in the document, I'm saving some files, and if I configure some Outlook or if I configure some favorites on my internet browser, etc. So technically it won't save on this VM. So what it will do, instead of saving here, it will save in the shared drive. So this shared drive, either it may be Azure file or it may be a Azure NetApp file. So this is where my storage will come into picture. So similarly, let's imagine you have multiple VMs. So the next day I'm coming and I'm launching my VDI. I'm connected to this VDI, right? So the moment you log into this VDI, right, I'll have some GPO, group policies, etc., which will go and talk to the storage and it will get all my data back. So now, irrespective of any VDI I log in, I will get all my data. So this is how you are offloading the dependency of your data from the VM. So let's say if this VM got corrupted, so never mind, because you don't have any data. So you can log into any other VM and you will get your data. However, in case of personal, that is not the case. Let's say this VM is corrupted. Then if you do not have backup, then gone, you don't have anything. So this is the biggest advantage when it comes to personal and pool, and also cost wise. So cost wise also, see here, even though it is one-to-one, it is mapped to one-to-one. However, here it is many to many. For example, let's say you have 100 users. Okay, let's go in this use case. For example, you have 10 users. If you use personal VDI, you have to create 10 VMs. Okay, but in case of Azure VDI, if you go with the pooled, so if you create 5 VMs, on top of it, if you enable multi-session, then you can manage all the 10 user with the help of 5 VMs. You can save cost. So this is similarly goes to if the number increases. Let's say if you have 1,000 users, so you can manage, you can deploy 100 VMs here, and then you can use multi-session and you can serve all the 1,000 users. However, in the pooled, you have to create 1,000 VMs, so which is way expensive when it comes to this. So again, I'm not telling that pooled is much better than personal. It is again based on your use case. For example, as I told you, if you have developers, etc., then pooled may not fit because it may create some issue for them. However, when it comes to workload such as call center or the user, they're only working on some specific application like say Excel, etc., etc., for them you can go with the pooled. Why? Because they don't need much personalization or etc., etc., on their VDA. In that case, you can use pooled. So my recommendation is check with your users what is the nature of their work, and based on that you can decide it. However, the big benefit of going with the pooled is you can save a lot of cost. So that is the biggest advantage. So we have covered what is pooled and what is personal, and then we have types of VDI, that is types of non-pooled like non-persistent VDI. As I told you, again in pooled we have single session as well as we have multi-session. Okay, so this is based on you. Let's say you have a pooled VDI. Again, in the pooled you want only one user per VM, that is also possible, or you can onboard multiple users also in the same. So you may have a question now, since I already having the multi-session, why I may need single session, right? So this is purely depends on the requirement. For example, consider you are working in a financial institute. Okay, so imagine you are giving a multi-session for the team. Let's say some team, they are working on the PCI applications, payment and card related applications. So imagine this is your VM. So this is the multi-session VM, right? So here, let's say 3 users are logged in, user A, user B, user C. So now if this user, A user, he is using one application in this VM, for example, let's say some payment related application, if he is doing some fraud, right, then it is very difficult to track using IP based forensic technique. Why? Because same IP is shared by 3 users and it's very difficult. Like, I'm not saying that it is not possible, it is very difficult. Okay, so in this scenario it is highly recommended to avoid multi-session. For them you need to go with the single session, so that even though let's say the user A, B, C. If he is doing some fraud on this, immediately you can catch and you can say that this is the user and it is his IP and he was doing the fraud. But when it comes to multi-session, it is difficult. You have to analyze more and it may take time and sometimes it may not be possible also. Why? Because 3 users are using the same IP address and it will get complicated. So in a financial institution, so if you are using payment applications, avoid multi-session unless and until you have some application related tracking, etc. Yeah. So this is the use case for the multi-session. So it is not always about the cost saving. So you may have a thinking that multi-session I can save this much money, but in single session I have to pay more. But it is not always about cost. It is also always about the security, risk, compliance, etc., etc. That you have to also think. Prerequisites. So prerequisites, basically you should have a Azure subscription. So without that you cannot deploy your VDIs. Then supported identity provider. So you should have Azure Active Directory and also you should have an Active Directory. So without that it is not possible. And then the supporting operating system. So either you should have Windows 10 or Windows 11 or Server 2019, 16 to whatever you say. So you need those those operating system. Then appropriate license, which I covered in the beginning. You may need to have E3, E5, A3, F1, F3, such licenses. And network connectivity. So you need to have your VNet and you need to have your subnets, etc. And then the remote desktop client. So as I told you, on the client side, you have to install, or you can use the HTML browser, or you can use iOS or Android things, yeah, to access your VDI. So this is the high level prerequisites. So I wanted to highlight more into identity provider. So when it comes to identity, you should have Azure Active Directory. For example, let's say I have a customer. Okay, so let's say this is the customer number A. So they does not have any Azure Active Directory or anything. Then it is not possible to deploy for for them Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop must require Azure Active Directory. Why? Because it supports either hybrid user or cloud user. So the meaning of this is hybrid is nothing but you should have Azure Active Directory, which is AAD I'm representing, plus Active Directory. So if the users are belongs to both, which is called as hybrid. So in this scenario, it is supported, or the pure cloud. It means that in your Azure Active Directory, if you have the only pure setup, let's say I am the customer, I'm opening a new company. Let's imagine I don't want to build any on-premise infrastructure. So I'll straight away go to Microsoft and I'll buy my tenant, etc. So it comes with Azure Active Directory. So here I will create my users, user 1, user 2, user 3, etc. Then I can build my virtual machines and everything purely on the cloud. So this scenario is possible. However, the scenario which I told you, let's say this is your data center, company B. So here you have your Active Directory. Now this customer is coming and saying that I need an Azure Active Directory solution. This is not possible. Why? Because you must have Azure tenant and then you need to have an Azure Active Directory, and then this user should be synced to the Azure Active Directory using Azure AD Connect, etc. So this we are referring it as hybrid. Hybrid means your user footprint is available both on cloud as well as on premise. The pure cloud means only on the Azure Active Directory. So such user identities are supported in Azure Virtual Desktop. So when it comes to VM, so VM you need to either join it to hybrid AD or you can join it to pure Azure AD also. The meaning of this is the whatever the VMs you're creating right on your virtual on your Azure tenant. So either you can join this to your Active Directory or you can join to your Azure AD as well. So both the scenario is supported. Okay, earlier this was not supported. Earlier only it was supported your the hybrid one, like which is you need to connect to your Active Directory. But now Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop also supports pure Azure AD as well. So the meaning of this is if the company does not have any on-premise data center or any DC or Active Directory, nothing, still they can get the Microsoft Azure tenant and set up their Azure Active Directory, and they can create their VM and they can join their VM to Azure Active Directory itself, and then they can create the user on the Azure AD and this user, let's say this is the user one I created, so purely he can log in and he can do all his work. Earlier this was not possible, now this is also possible. So this is the quick brief about the identity when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop, so the supported things. So now let's go to the last slide. So we have only 5 minutes left. So consideration, the first one is always deploy Azure VMs close to your location to avoid latency. It means that I'm sitting in UAE, so it is not recommended me to choose Singapore or US as my VM location. So always choose the region which is near to you. So there is a link which is called Azure Estimator. So if you go here, it will tell you which is the nearest Azure region for you, and it's better you have to select the nearest one, which is which will provide you less latency. So if you can see, I have UAE North, which is 33 milliseconds. So if I choose somewhere around East US, it will give you 224 milliseconds, so that my VDI will be very, very, very slow, and I will have a lot of issues. So always choose which is near to you. So the second consideration is consider availability zones. So why I'm saying consider availability zone, because so you will have a highly available solution. Let's say availability zone is nothing but your VMs will be distributed across Microsoft data center. Yeah, even if one data center goes down, you'll still have other VMs available in another data centers. So always choose availability zones over other options like without availability zone. And consider ZRS storage for FS logic profile. As I told you, for roaming profile, always choose Azure file, premium file with the ZRS. ZRS nothing but zone redundant storage. Even let's say if one region goes, not one region, sorry, even one zone goes down, you'll still have your data, your roaming data available in another 2 data centers. So this will give you an active solution, so that you no need to manage or maintain another region as a DR solution. I hope you got my point. For example, let's say if you are deploying 100 VMs or 100 VDAs, choose availability zones along with the ZRS, so that you will get a active solution. So you no need to do periodic DR test, etc. Why? Because by default it comes with active solution. So this is one of the good thing when you choose availability zones. Then consider auto scale or reserved instance for cost saving. So always think that, let's say if you are going to use your VDA for another 3 years or another 2 years, consider going with the reserved instance. Why? Because it will give you approximately 60% discount. Let's say if I'm paying $100 for my VM, so I'll get approximately 60% discount if I choose 3 years, etc. So again, this is purely based on your use case. Either you can use auto scale. So auto scale is nothing but after office hours it will turn off the VMs. So some scenario it is not recommended. If the people are working 24/7, then auto scale won't help. You have to go with the reserved instance. Again, it is based on the use case. Consider using premium disk for multi-session. Why? Because when you use multi-session, lot of users are logging into the same VM, right? So it will create huge IOPS. So in order to cop up the IOPS requirement, always prefer to go with the premium disk instead of using standard or some other disk. And the next point is consider bypassing proxy for the Azure VDA traffic. And as I already explained, and also Teams media optimization. So one of the main application people use inside VDA is Teams. So when you call via Teams inside the VDA, by default, what it will do, it will use the Azure backbone, Azure Internet to reach your Teams cloud, and it will use the VDA resource. Since it is a voice traffic, right? So it will use more resource of your VDA. Sometimes your VDA will get overutilized and it will disconnect in between your call, etc. I think most of you guys have faced this already. So in order to avoid, what you can do media optimization. What it will do, it will offload the AV traffic from your VDA to the local laptop. So all the traffic related to AV, it will go over the local laptop or local network, and also it will use the local system resource. And then use private endpoint to connect your storage, etc. And always choose always check your round trip. So it is better you'll have 150 milliseconds round trip between your client and the Azure VDA. So if it goes more than this, you'll have issues. So this is the brief about today's session. So if you go to my blog where I documented all the best practices when it comes to security, identity, governance, compliance, network, connectivity. So like this is purely based on my experience. So you can go through this and you can get more details. What are the things you need to consider before you plan and deploy. Multi. Let's say if you are deploying a huge infrastructure which is more than 1,000 VDAs, etc. Then you can go through this and you will get many details. What are the things you should to consider? Yeah. So similarly, if you wanted to learn more about Azure VDA, etc. So I have my course here as well. So in the Udemy, some of the courses are also available in Azure Business, Udemy for Business. You can get it if you have a business account for free. Otherwise, you can choose over here. So some of them are highly rated or bestseller, whatever it is. And if you don't want to spend money and if you want to learn for free, I have the course which is also uploaded in the YouTube also. So you can grab this and you can you can learn. Yeah, so this is my channel. So as you can see, VDA Bus. So here I have a playlist for all the course which I conducted. Like I have VDA course, I have Citrix NetScaler. Then if you wanted to learn a hub and spoke, you have FS Logics, etc., etc. So this is the brief. So if you have any questions, I think we already crossed 2 minutes. Sorry for this. So this is the brief about.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I've already posted most of the links to the chat, the Udemy courses and everything like that. I have one question, if I may, regarding the cleanup of the AVDs in 80. So I most of the questions are in the chat. So that's one of the questions that I need to get answers for. How do you do the cleanup?
Cleanup in the sense like I did not get like what like you're talking about profile cleanup or
no. So you have like a pooled AVDs which connect to the AD, and then like some of the machines are not going to be created again, which means that it will not reuse some of the names, and then the names will be like within a junk or something like that.
Okay, I got my point. Like let's say like if you delete the virtual machines, still you'll have AD objects in a stale in the as of now, there is no inbuilt solution within the Microsoft Azure VDA. We have to use the script. I can post the script for the cleanup, and also there is one more third-party solution which is Noidio, I believe. So they have some more scripting actions for the cleanup, etc. But definitely I will post you this script which I have for this cleanup. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I have one question. Maybe this was not the topic covered, but yes, since you were explaining the gateway region and all. So in my environment, we have an RDP short path enabled, and what we are observing is that because of the security constraints, our session hosts are hosted in the US region, but there are users who are from India. They access it. So what we find is that there is always always the error. We see a WVD errors where we see the RDP short path network drop. So I just wanted to understand that does RDP short path depends upon the distance of the gateway region and the session hosts which are hosted in the region. Like we have the session hosts in the US and there are India users. So when we check, we see the gateway regions coming up as CIN, like Central India, South India. But since so we cannot deploy those VMs because of some security policies. So I just wanted to understand because of that. Yeah.
See, RDP short path by default, what it will do, instead of the return traffic, which I told you, right? Instead of going over the gateway, it will try to reach the session host directly over the UDP. Okay, but
So sometimes
again,
we see UDP and sometimes it transfers to WebSocket. So that is actually where we are causing that is causing an issue. So even on the updated RD client version, what is happening is that when it switches to the WebSocket, sometimes the user gets disconnected, and this is actually so. I wanted to understand why even we are, and we have configured it for managed networks. Like the user is on the VPN and he's getting disconnected. So any insights on that? I mean, I mean, it's
see, they
hard,
are,
but
yeah, it's very complicated. But the thing
it
is, see,
is,
it's
yeah.
very, yeah. The very simple funda is the more the distance, the more will be the latency. Even though
Okay.
if you enable RDP short path, still
Uh-huh.
the connection, initial connection, etc. So
Uh-huh.
it will have the latency, right? Because your
Uh-huh.
users are in India and your
Mm.
session host is are in
US,
US,
East US.
so there will be a huge latency. So
Mm-hmm.
even though if you when you enable RDP short path, the return traffic only it will use the direct path. But again,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it will go over multiple hops. It is not a direct connections.
Yeah, because I'm trying to relate it, Kuber, because you are correct. Because when I see the RTT time, even if these protocols are getting changed, the RTT is remaining same
Yes, yes,
because
yes,
of
yes.
the bandwidth. So it's like 234 ms or it's going around 234, 235 ms. But again, even if it is on UDP or WebSocket, it's keeps on
Yes.
remaining on the same RTT. I got
Yes,
your
yes.
point.
See, to be honest, with my experience, if
Mm,
your session host is far away from your users, even though
mm,
if you
mm,
enable RDP short path also,
mm.
it does not help much.
Much.
And
Okay, got it.
moreover, not only RDP short path, even if you enable private endpoint also, that does
Mm,
not make much sense. So it is
mm,
always best practice to deploy nearest to your region. But I agree, due to some security or governance
mm,
complaints,
mm,
you cannot
mm,
deploy, on some
mm,
regions. But
mm.
this is, it is a physical law, right? Like the more is the distance, the more latency you have.
More sense. Yeah.
Yes,
So this
that you
is quite
cannot
a
solve.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Thanks. I was having some doubt. You
No
cleared
problem.
it. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay, no problem.
All
Yes, Giselle.
right. Wonderful.
I hope the
This was,
session is informative, and I hope you guys have followed whatever I explained,
yeah,
with my knowledge.
it
So
was great. It was great. I learned a lot, and I recommend everyone to check out the Udemy courses that I posted on chat. I think we had the amount of people in the meeting was the most that we had ever. So
great.
we had
Nice to know.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
at least we have new Icelandic friends, so that is fantastic, and hopefully we can get another session from you. It was
Definitely.
very informative. Maybe a more deep dive session if that would be possible. I know that at least Björn is willing to take a more deep dive.
Sure, Giselle. It is my pleasure, and it is my pleasure to talk on this event. So thank you so much once again, and thank you all for the participants for your time. And yeah, good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much, and until next time.
Yes.
Have a nice weekend.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.